Hello everyone, welcome live to 3YTV tonight's broadcast of the National Sim Racing Association Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series here on 3YTV. I am Peter Short, and joining me in the booth here tonight for the Suicide Prevention Awareness 200 is Drew Eisenman. And Drew, here tonight, it is Hotlanta. Some very, very fast race trucks here tonight, but also in practice, they've been very, very slick for these drivers.
Yeah, and with these trucks and kind of the more recent configurations that these trucks have been running, it's almost a mini super speedway here at Atlanta. Some really, really close times throughout the top 10. In fact, throughout the entire field, first place in practice, John Canizarro at a .399. And the slowest truck still in the 31s is Evan Bushbosher, who is third slowest of those drivers taking times, who's only 0.6 of a second, not even 0.6 of a second slower than Canizarro. So, Peter, that is all but two cars covered by 0.6. It's going to be a close field here tonight.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be a close field. Also going to be a very close qualifying here at this racetrack, and that's what we anticipate. But as the run goes on, Drew, we do expect these tires to start to wear, the racetrack to maybe get a little bit more slippery, and definitely we're looking forward to a great race here tonight at Hotlanta. And speaking of hot, well, let's go look at the current track temperature right there on the right-hand side of your screen. Track temperature up at 120 degrees Fahrenheit as John Canizarro gets to the outside of Zach Cowell. They make a little bit of contact here in practice, and it looks like they're kind of stuck together there on the max stretch. But 120 degrees track temperature, Drew, that's going to be pretty slippery, and we'll probably see that probably drop as the race goes on, but something these drivers will be mindful of.
Yeah, I mean, so I think in the short run, that track temp isn't going to make a big difference, but I think 5, 10, 15 laps into a run, it's going to be massive as far as the grip is concerned. These guys are going to really start sliding around once we get into a fuel run. And once again, we are running full fuel here tonight in kind of contrast to the majority of the season last season. And Peter, 4 tire sets in this race, so tire conservation is going to be a key factor.
Yeah, absolutely. These drivers will have to mind their P's and Q's as this race goes on. 200 miles, 134 laps, and it is going to be an interesting night in more than one regard, Drew, because here tonight, it's a special night. Of course, it is a suicide prevention lifeline, kind of a suicide prevention awareness. In the description, there's a little bit more about the suicide prevention lifeline, but the number is 1-800-273-TALK. And if you know someone or you yourself, if you need to go talk, you can go check them out. Also, suicidepreventionlifeline.org. We encourage everyone who needs it to go out there and talk. Talking is a very powerful tool. We get to do it up here in the 3YTV booth. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat sometimes probably wish we aren't talking, but it is a lot of fun up here in the booth. Stephen Doziak saying evening all. Thanks for joining on in here tonight, Stephen. Good luck out there on the racetrack. But we also have a special night because MaxGrafix Racing is donating $3 for every green flag lap here tonight at Atlanta Motor Speedway for up to $402 if we go caution free. Then an additional $10 for every MaxGrafix racing truck inside the top 5. And if the race goes caution-free, an additional $30 bonus on top of the $402. So all in all, there's a grand total here tonight of a possible $750 if MaxGrafix racing trucks lead every single lap, finish all inside the top 5, and we go caution-free. So there's a lot of money on the line here tonight, and it is really cool to see MaxGrafix Racing. A big shout out to them. Of course, MaxGrafix.co, one of the series sponsors here tonight, putting up the cash. Christopher Darling mentioned to me, Drew, that this is something that is important to him to get out there for people to be aware of and to know the phone number, 1-800-273-TALK. And, let people know about that phone number. You don't always know who needs it, but there are people who definitely need that number here tonight. So we appreciate everyone joining in, and there's a good cause, some money on the line here tonight, and hopefully we can make some good money that will be donated to charity, to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline here tonight on 3 Wide TV. And I gotta say, really cool to have that, and the practice session here winding up.
Yeah, it's always I think it's something that if it's impacted you and those you care about, it's something that you're going to be very passionate about. So awesome to see Chris Darling put his hard-earned dollars towards a very, very noble cause. But now we have trucks rolling here in qualifying. 2 laps, pretty standard oval qualifying here tonight. The 74 of Mike Aiello already on track, as are several other drivers now. And Peter, here at Atlanta, I anticipate it being totally flat in qualifying. Would this be a track that you think running that kind of traditional super speedway high groove on your outlap might be beneficial, or do you think it's going to be a wash?
I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a couple of drivers try it out. We'll see whether or not that's true. Here is the number 2 of Justin White, who was not exactly near the top. He was mid-pack in the practice session that we had just a little while ago. Mike Aiello, Drew, was lights out in qualifying at Daytona, so he's going to be one driver we'll have to keep our eyes on here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway here tonight for maybe some qualifying technique. Let's see what he's doing here, and he is kind of running that middle to upper groove here, Drew, and I expect him to bring it down to the bottom side of the racetrack on his lap number 2.
Yeah, I like that kind of middle groove. I think sometimes, and here's a little bit different because you are still at kind of the limit of grip, even though you're flat, versus Daytona and Talladega, not nearly as much. But I like that middle groove. That was really close to the wall for the 74, because you're not going to bind that thing up on exit. I think the problem when you run that high groove there, Peter, is on exit, that truck is going to drift outward once that banking falls away. And if you're too high, you're going to have to put wheel into the truck, which is then going to, scrub the front tires and kind of be counterproductive to trying to carry as much speed as possible. So I like what that 74 was doing. He's now P4, Matt Cherry P1. Now looking at Josh Sobel. Now looking at Matt Cherry, our provisional pole sitter, with a 4:22. And Peter, I got to say, improving on your practice time here in qualifying is a pretty good accomplishment for Matt Cherry, because most of those laps in practice are going to be draft laps.
Yeah, Josh Sobel in the number 57 also doing the same thing. He is now 3rd on the board as they currently sit. So it is Cherry, Canizarro, and Canizarro is trying to find the road course or something. Not sure what he's exactly doing. Here's Christopher Darling. He's on his hot lap in the Taz Racing Customs, number 11 Ford F-150, trying to pick up the pole here in the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. He's going to jump up to 3rd on the board, so moves Josh Sobel now back to 5th, as Nick Kessler is also slotted in the other Taz Racing Customs Chevrolet, however, in the number 88. And Drew, he's on his fast lap right now. Great lap time for Nick Kessler on his first lap. What can he do here on lap number 2? Can he pick it up and possibly dethrone Matt Cherry from the pole?
We will know once he crosses the start-finish line. Now he can. A 3:53 for Nick Kessler. And Peter, bottom lane on both laps. And that number 88 is able to grab the pole from Jason Gracias, who went P2 in that number 1 machine that we're looking at now. Love that gray camo with purple logos and numbers, number 1 machine. Very quick last night in the NSRA Grand National Series. So another fantastic effort for that number 1 machine. But right now, Nick Kessler on provisional pole. And Peter, you seen any other guys that you think you're going to challenge him out there right now?
I'm not seeing anyone out there on the racetrack who is on a hot lap that might be able to pull off the pole. We're looking at Barry Knapp here in the number 42 machine, currently 25th. Now make that 26 out of the 26 drivers to take time. Zach Howell just put himself 22nd. These drivers will need some big pickups on lap number 2. But I'll tell you what, Drew, One driver I'll be keeping my eyes on here tonight is Jordan Scheffler. And why am I keeping my eyes on Jordan Scheffler? Well, what a race last week right here on 3 Wide TV. Daytona International Speedway as Howell gets loose out of turn number 4. But Jordan Scheffler was the driver who ended up going to victory lane. Some late race drama, Drew. Lane changes very late in the race. We saw it even last night here on 3 Wide TV in the National Sim Racing Association. I know a lot of drivers will be keeping their eyes on lane changes. We saw it happen to Mike Aiello, and the number 13 of Scheffler went to victory lane at Daytona. But all things considered, we're going to keep our eyes on lane changes here tonight. Well, that's going to do it for the qualifying session. Nick Kessler and the number 88 machine will be starting tonight on the pole position. We will just have to wait and see when Nick Kessler can get out there in his car, because we do have the Craig Setup Shop a Pole Award to hand out to that number 88 machine. Only the second driver this season to pick up a Craig Setup Shop Pole Award. Make sure you check out craigsetupshop.co.uk for all of your iRacing custom setups needs, because I'll tell you what, some great quality setups, especially for people like myself, Drew. Just, I don't have the time anymore to put a bunch of time into making a setup. Craig Setup Shop, they put all the work into it. You pick it up and you run with it. So big shout out to our friends over at Craig Setup Shop for handing out the pole award here tonight to the number 88 machine of Nick Kessler. Let's see if we can bring up tonight's starting lineup here. Drew, why don't you start us off with that front row?
Yeah, Nick Kessler and Jason Gracias will be leading the field to the green flag on that front row. Matt Cherry will be on the inside of John Canizarro in row 2. Then it's Chris Darling rolling off 5th with Josh Sobel in the number 57 machine rolling off in 6th. Then Jeff Price in that number 14 and Doug Neal will be rolling off 7th and 8th. And then rounding out our top 10 will be Randy Bledsoe and Philip Scott.
Yeah, and then back behind them on row number 6, Mike Aiello and Randy Perdue there. Then back behind them on row number 7 will be Ben Mashburn and Cody Brown. Nathan Maurer, Jordan Scheffler on row number 8. Justin White is back there on the inside of row number 9 with TJ Buck to his outside. Stan Hausman, Travis White rounding out your top 20, Drew.
And then 21st, William Kerwin with Monty Glover starting to his outside. Zach Howell in 23rd with Joshua Corner, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, rolling off to his outside. Then Adam Dama in that number 28 machine. He will be rolling off in, if I'm not mistaken, 25th position. Then Evan Bushbosher, 26th. 27th, Barry Knapp. Dalton Hayes, Scott Tompkins, Stephen Doziak Jr., Vincent Valvano, Chad Waller, Garrett Gleason, Kyle Lewis, Jason Shue, and then I believe Johnny Williams, if I'm not mistaken, will be rounding out our field as we come out of turn 4.
Yeah, pace car heads off. It is a short pace lap here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Green flag is in the air here tonight for 150 miles. It was originally scheduled to be 200, but hey, it's 100 now, so take 50 miles off of that board here tonight. That's going to shorten up the race and might change the strategies for these drivers, but it is Nick Kessler in the number 88 machine gets the race lead. First side-by-side battle is for second. That is Matt Cherry to the inside of the number 1 of Jason Gracias. A wiggle out of the number 54 machine. We expect to see a couple of those wiggles. Another wiggle, another big wiggle, another big wiggle, and Cherry saves it, Drew. How on earth did the 54 keep it going straight?
Yeah, that 54 has put on quite a display the past few weeks. A ton of speed displayed in multiple cars has Matt Cherry, and another heck of a job right there at a turn 4. His rear tires, though, are going to be super, super hot right now. Not a lot of rear grip is going to be had for that number 54 machine. It'll be interesting to see how he handles the exit at turn 4 this time. He's going to have to be real ginger there, Peter, is, yeah, he lost a little bit of speed on corner exit, but back throughout the pack, I think that is going to be a problem that these guys have increasingly as this run goes on. Not a great sign for that 54 that happened this early.
So Canizarro in the number 12 machine, side-by-side for the race lead as well. Canizarro is one of those drivers we're going to have to keep our eyes on. I think the big question with John Canizarro is, can he keep the 4 tires underneath him here tonight as he's going to rocket around the number 88, get to the front. So becoming only the second race leader here early in the infancy stages tonight. Chris Darling side by side with Matt Cherry. Excuse me, he'll take that spot. Here comes Joshua Sobel back behind him. Sobel here, always strung on the 1.5 mile Drew. So I'm not all too surprised that Josh Sobel here is riding inside the top 10, just outside the top 5 right now, as Sobel holding station from where the drop of the green flag, where he was at the drop of the green flag, I should say. Randy Bledsoe in the number 81 back behind him, fastest in practice for a good amount of the practice session. John Canizarro was able to kind of nip him at the end for that title. But that number 81 running in the 7th position, running right up against the outside line, Drew. And up there, sometimes you can save a little bit of tire running that outside line. Sometimes you can't. It really depends on the racetrack. But all things looking good here for Bledsoe, plus 2 spots from the start of the race.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt your tire, or you might not save any, but it sure seems like that 81 is making some good pace on that high lane, cutting underneath that 57 of Josh Sobel. And yeah, some really good pace from the number 81. Now looking to the inside of Matt Cherry. It'll be interesting to see when you're used to running that one groove and then all of a sudden you find yourself on the bottom, it can kind of take you a corner or two to kind of adjust your driving style to suit the different demands of those different lines take. Now looking at that number 84 machine of TJ Buck in 15th position in the battle back here around the 15th position, and fairly cordial back here from about 10th to 18th, right around there is what we're looking at right now, but a bit of separation right there between basically the top 10 and outside the top 10. Now looking at that 81, again making that high lane work.
Yeah, he's trying to get around the number 57 of Josh Sobel and completes that pass. So move Bledsoe now up into 6th. Now trying to close in on the 54 Stay Tuned Sports Podcast truck that we saw get all loosey-goosey there on lap number 1. Just looking up and down the scoreboard, there is Randy Perdue. He's gained a couple of spots right there. One driver who's sliding back is Doug Neal from the Atlanta, Georgia area. And in fact, a couple of drivers from Atlanta area here tonight. One of those being Doug, and the other one being, of course, Stan Hausman in the BeerStreetJournal.com Ford F-150. There he is. Of course, Beer Street Journal, also a series sponsor here in the National Sim Racing Association. But a couple of those drivers from the Atlanta, Georgia area. In fact, Stan also is a co-owner of the Brookstone Animal Hospital that you find in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And, of course, sponsor of the Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award. So there are going to be a couple of drivers to keep our eyes on here tonight. Drew, we had a couple of hometown heroes last night here in the Beer Street Journal Grand National Series when we were at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Well, we got a couple of hometown heroes here in this race to keep our eyes on tonight as well.
Yeah, the drivers there might be a bunch of drivers that were in last night's race. Hopefully there's a little less contact. Hopefully that is not shared. The amount of contact that happened last night, short track racing, absolutely some good fun. But if that amount of contact and spinning goes on at Atlanta, we have some problems. But so far, so good here on lap 10 out of 100. And yeah, you mentioned it, Peter, a little bit shorter race here tonight. Not sure. Oh, the 54 and the 81 made a little contact going into turn 3. That was almost a caution, but they keep it together as the 81 slipping and sliding through 3 and 4. And Peter, that was almost a big crash.
Now let's go back and see if we can get that one here on the 3-wide TV replay. Do apologize if you can hear the noisy train in the background. The good old Kansas City Southern letting us know that it's out there. But let's see what happened here with that number 81 going off into turn number 3. Oh, yeah, contact down the backstretch. I'm not sure, Drew, if that was netcode or what, but look at that save out of that number 81. He was all the way out of the throttle. Look at Philip Scott coming back up to his back bumper, having to swing wide, but a great heads-up move there by the number 99 machine. In fact, all the drivers doing a stellar job. So we stay green flag here at Atlanta. Have yet to see the caution flag fly here tonight. And by the looks of things, Drew, these cars are slip-sliding around. Meanwhile, up at the front of the field, look at this. Side by side, Nick Kessler, John Canizarro again. Kessler started on the pole. And oh, man, they get tight going off into turn number 3.
Yeah, that 12 machine right on the door of Nick Kessler going into the corner, and then that can really take the air off of the truck on the inside. And I wonder if that kind of compounded that bit of racing right there between the two drivers vying for the lead. But I got to say, this high lane is really impressing me thus far, Peter. I really think that is going to be a really good option for these guys as this run goes on. I think you're just able to carry that momentum just a little bit better on that outside. And if I were one of these guys, I would be trying to make that outside lane work, trying to pass guys, because that number 12 is struggling to make this pass on the inside.
Yeah, Canizarro, of course, has led a couple of laps here tonight, and looks like Kessler going to go back to where he started. One driver who is on the move is the number 11, Chris Darling. Great run so far for the Taz Racing Customs Ford F-150, and Drew, he needs a good run here tonight to Daytona. Not all too kind to Chris Darling, finishing down in the 20th position, and that is where he is in the point standings entering here tonight. So Darling's going to need a good run, and so far, so good for Darling. I know Darling's one of those drivers who sometimes struggles to get the whole race together. I'm sure he'll have that on his mind going into this season, maybe trying to minimize that mistakes. I know 2 seasons ago, Drew, we saw a lot of mistakes out of Chris Darling. Last season, quite a lot less mistakes. And hopefully he can continue that trend of making less moments where you shoot yourself in the foot here in this particular season in the National Sim Racing Association Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series. As John Canizarro gets loose coming out of turn number 4, and here comes Darling to the outside, continuing that strong run.
Yeah, I wonder if just keeping that 12 truck on the bottom has maybe overheated that 12's tires a little bit. You have to put more wheeling than you would like, as he's able to get in front of that number 1 machine of Jason Gracias right there and kind of, stop that freight train that can sometimes happen if you're kind of stuck on the less preferable groove. But yeah, I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing from this number 11 machine of Chris Darling. Started in 5th, now up to 2nd position. So a solid charge forward was Chris Darling. And yeah, I don't think the 11 has necessarily ever lacked speed. I think that especially last season, it felt like just kind of some bad luck once the playoffs came around is kind of what led to that 11's undoing. But it always felt like he had speed to compete everywhere. Maybe not the favorite, but certainly is not one of those guys that you ever think, oh, well, he's not going to be competitive. Whoa, that was really close between Philip Scott and Matt Cherry and Josh Sobel right there. That number 99 just threaded the needle between those two trucks. Is now Josh Sobel taking a look on the inside here on lap 18, Peter. And we're closing in on a quarter distance, and this race is flying by with no cautions thus far.
Yeah, no cautions thus far. Hopefully that is not the commentator jinxing it. Just go a little bit further back. Here's Nathan Maurer, TJ Buck. They're locked in a battle. Then we have this group of cars. That is the number 8, Cody Brown, Doug Neal, and the number 23 there of Travis White. And those drivers, you can see them fishtailing coming out of the corner. These trucks definitely starting to get looser and looser and looser, but Neal's going to take that spot. He started in 8th, now running in 13th. Travis White started down in 20th, now running 14th. Cody Brown is just about where he started in 14th, now running in 15th. So these drivers here kind of having a scrap between themselves. And back to this battle, Drew. They said, you know what, we had a lot of fun a couple laps ago. Let's do it all over again.
Yeah, heck of a battle between these 3, now about to be 4 drivers, as that number 25 machine making his presence known. Relative newcomer to the NSRA Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series, Randy Perdue in that 25 machine, kind of the old school Dale Earnhardt scheme right there. Is the 54. It almost seems like that 54's rear tires just never have had the chance to cool down ever since he had that moment. That 54's just seems like been struggling a little bit, and that's what can happen with the way iRacing has traditionally modeled its tires. It's heat more than wear, and as your tires get hotter, they just get hotter and hotter and hotter. And once you have a moment like that, you can just continue to struggle. Like that 54 again had a little wiggle out of turn 2 and just can't seem to keep the rear under that number 54 machine. And Peter, that might be a problem that he deals with until there's either a caution or he gets those tires off and a new set on.
Well, this isn't the first time, Drew, that we've actually seen Matt Cherry have problems with rear tires. Not sure if it's his driving style, maybe it's the brake bias he likes to use, but we saw even at Daytona last week a lot of wiggles out the back of the number 54 machine. Another wiggle there coming out of turn number 2, so maybe he tries to get that racetrack as free as he can make it with the brake bias to wheel it, if you will, wheel it around these corners, and sometimes that's good. Loose is fast, but speaking of loose, how about Josh Sobel? That's a big moment for the 57. Good save as he was underneath the 54, and now he's going to cut up in front of the number 25 of Randy Perdue, who has gained 4 spots since the drop of the green flag. TJ Buck, Travis White, 2 of the biggest movers of the field, but it is Dalton Hayes up 8 spots currently, who is our biggest mover of the race. He started in 28th, now running up into the 20th position. So good job so far for driver of the number 47. We got the side-by-side action. Looks like the 25 is going to have to slot back in. Let's look a little bit further back. Side-by-side action between last week's race winner, the number 13 of Jordan Scheffler here, and the number 77 of Doug Neal. So the Simbox number 77, a good-looking hot rod there. Of course, Simbox, one of the series partners here in the National Sim Racing Association. You can go check them out on their Facebook page and get a button box if you need some more buttons for your sim racing rig. And I'll tell you what, a good quality product for a great price. Check out our friends over at Simbox on their Facebook page, as Neil will lose that spot to Jordan Scheffler. The battle's kind of all over the racetrack. They're kind of in little spurts here, Drew.
Yeah, and Peter, kind of going back to Doug Neal, I love that scheme. It almost looks like if the old, 2003 Kurt Busch Sharpie scheme was combined with, the Dave Blaney Jasper 77. It's a real cool paint scheme that truck has going. But now, Jason Gracias somehow get by Chris Darling for second position. And now these two are going to battle it out again as Chris Darling tries to come back at the number 1. And all this is doing, folks, is letting that 88 scoot away from these guys. Now about a 9/10 of a second lead does that 88 have on these two. That looked a lot closer from the previous angle than it does right here. But that number 11 trying to make that bottom line work. And I just think, Peter, as these tires start to wear, I think that bottom line is just going to become more and more dominant, and that inside line is going to be harder and harder to make work, especially when you're trying to pass these guys. It's now over a second lead from that number 88 machine. And Peter, now that we're close to lap 30, when do you think that this pit window is going to start to open up for these guys, or when are they going to have to start pitting?
I think these drivers are going to try and make it to lap number 50. If they can make it to lap number 50, that's the halfway mark. I think that is going to be kind of the best opportunity for these drivers to come down pit road. You see Nick Kessler there. He is slowly increasing that gap back to Jason Gracias back behind him. You can see back on lap 23, it was about 9/10 of a second, now up to about 1.2. So Kessler with the clean air on the nose of that racetrack. I'm sure he'll be very happy. But you can't look back all too far because, of course, Gracias is a very hungry driver back there. Because last night, of course, involved in a lane-changing situation. And unfortunately for Gracias, stripped of that win last night right here on the channel. If you watched that one and you didn't stick it out to the end, well, you missed the official call from league officials on that one. So we actually interviewed the top 3 as they went across the start-finish line. We had to kind of shift gears on the fly on the channel. It made for a very interesting post-race, that's for sure. But this battle a little bit further back between Sobel, Cherry, and Randy Perdue. Well, Sobel has got around Matt Cherry. Cherry now in danger of losing 7th as well, as Perdue is digging on the bottom side of the racetrack here, Drew.
Yeah, a continued battle for Matt Cherry, just trying to stop this backward momentum that 54 has had. And yeah, you mentioned it. Even last night, as somebody who was in the race last night, the 54 struggled, it seemed like, on those longer runs, as another big wiggle out of 2. I think Matt Cherry's a guy that I've noticed has a lot of raw speed, especially in short runs. But just sometimes I think overdrives his machine a little bit to the benefit of speed, especially on restarts. I think that Matt Cherry can be one that's kind of hard to deal with. But once he gets into those runs, I think he can just kind of overdrive his stuff a little bit, and that's probably what's happening right now. This is a truck, this 81 machine, that I gotta say I was expecting a little bit more pace out of based on practice, as now he's battling Stan Hausman. Peter, this 81 machine was solidly up in the top 10, battling near the top 5, all the way down to 14th as this 81 falling now 15th as Stan Hausman's gotten by him. And Peter, ever since that contact between the 54 and the 81, both drivers have really suffered, in the ensuing laps.
Yeah, you can see maybe a little bit of right front damage on that number 81. You're going to have to really look for it here on the extra zoomed in camera, but you just see a little bit of a crinkle to that right front that isn't supposed to be there, and I just wonder if that's affecting the 81, as you could see those hands inside the cockpit there, as Bledsoe has a little bit of a moment coming out of turn number 2, still staying steadfast to that higher line. However, let's look a little bit further back in the pack here. Zach Howell and Monty Glover, they're kind of locked in a battle back there. Behind them, Barry Knapp, Vincent Valvano's back there, then Steven Doziak. And look at this side-by-side. Well, it actually isn't a side-by-side battle. That is the two of Justin White, who is multiple laps down. In fact, he's only on lap 3 of the race right now. Not sure if something happened to Justin White in that number 2 machine, but he's on fresher tires because those tires are only 3 laps old. And the Grinds machine trying to grind here to pick up some points if anyone falls out. We do have the number 18 of Kyle Lewis, who has dropped by the wayside here on the racetrack, but we have drivers on pit road. You can see it right there here, Drew. Nick Kessler, your race leaders down pit road here at the 1/3 race distance, so I guess they realized they couldn't make it to lap number 50 to make it a 1-stop race, so they'll make it a 2-stop race.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anybody can make it close to lap 50. This makes sense. If you think you can't make it to lap 50, lap 33 coming to lap 44, absolutely a good choice. The 1/3 mark, it's just, this is one of those places, especially in these trucks. I think in the old school cut package, you could save quite a bit of fuel at Atlanta on these longer runs. In these trucks, though, there's just not a lot of off-throttle time, so it's going to be really hard to save any type of fuel. But, Peter, another thing is this isn't the easiest pit road to get on and off of, especially if you're trying to maximize your pit entry. It's not terribly hard to kind of be going in a little too fast. Have you seen any indications of penalties whatsoever?
Yeah, that car right there, we're looking at him. The number 3 of Jason Shue, he's stuck in his pit box. Adam Dama in the number 28 machine, also an extended stay on pit road. So at least right now, Adam Dama and Jason Shue, the 2 drivers that I have seen who might have fallen foul of a pit road speeding penalty. Here comes John Canizarro to get fresh boots on his truck. Jeff Price on pit road. Dalton Hayes in his Terry Labonte scheme right there in his pit box. But Randy Perdue is your race leader. But as I say that, here comes Randy to peel onto pit road himself. That will hand the race lead over to driver of the number 23 machine. There he is, Travis White, sticking it out. We'll see how long the 23 can go till he decides to come down pit road. But Drew, as soon as Kessler dropped down onto pit road, it seemed like the pit road was open, but we did miss 1 lap prior to Nick Kessler coming down pit road. This man right here pitted. Jason Gracias pitted on lap number 32, and because of that, Drew, he's now got about a 3-second advantage over Nick Kessler. There's Kessler, and that little truck that you see out there about halfway through turn number 1 and 2 right now, that is Jason Gracias. So Gracias able to do the undercut, if you will, and get quite an advantage here over Kessler and Darling.
Yeah, and I think that certainly some of that is that undercut. I think I would assume that a lot of that, though, is probably getting on and off of pit road. I mean, that's where you can gain far more time than you can necessarily, like, over 1 lap, right, of undercut. Like, I'm sure these guys, like I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at these lap times and kind of see just how much drivers were falling off in that run as we pull that up. So they started in the high 31s. Actually, Peter, yeah, they were running in the mid 33s. So probably a good second and a half, close to 2 seconds of that was that undercut. But I think that one machine probably nailed getting on and off of pit road, and that's where the rest of that came into effect. Because if you look at that 88 and the 11, the 88 had a little bit bigger lead on the 11 than after those pit stops. But Peter, we still have the 23, the 13, the 74, the 8, several other drivers coming onto pit road now. But I think some of those guys are trying to stretch it a little bit. What do you think the thinking is behind staying out at this point? You think these guys are going to try to stretch it to lap 50? Do you think that's plausible? And if not, I got to wonder, what would be the thinking behind staying out when you know you can't make it to halfway?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the only thing you can think of is that you might put yourself in an opportunity late in the race where you have a late race lead. Maybe the other drivers have already come down. We expect a lot of our leaders to come down around lap number 66 if they're going to do the 1/3, 2/3 race strategy. And maybe they're just thinking that, if I can push this to the limits, maybe I can go to lap number 85, and if a caution flag comes out on lap number 80, hey, that's a huge benefit. We're just going to have to see how everything cycles on out. That's always the fun thing here on 3Y TV, of having different drivers on different strategies. If you are wondering right now, the gap between our race leader, we're looking at him right now, Travis White, and the first driver on fresh tires, Jason Gracias, is about 16 and a half seconds between those two. But of course, Gracias is lapping a little bit faster than Travis White. We'll see if we can kind of bring up possibly the difference between those two drivers here, right there, and that's not the right driver. I apologize for that. Let's see if we can get the right one there. Try again. There we go. With that gap closing in, I mean, look at that. Five laps ago, Drew, it was about 7 seconds bigger. So right now, Gracias is closing in over a second a lap on Travis White. So you do the math, it will probably be down about 7 seconds when Travis finally elects to come down pit road. But the good news for the number 23 is if he can make it to the halfway mark, he will probably come down pit road still as the race leader, which could be very beneficial to kind of prove his strategy might be the right one at the end of the race.
Yeah, certainly agree with that, Peter, that those strategy calls can make the world of difference, especially if this 23 can make it to lap number 50. But man, I'm really surprised that 23 isn't losing, quite frankly, more time to that 88. He's going to have to save a lot of fuel. But Peter, even though he's losing that time now, he's going to have substantially fresher tires by the time he does come down on pit road, and then that's going to almost offset itself, right? Because these tires do plateau. Just kind of looking at those leaders now, looking at the lap times of that number 1 machine, that number 1 is already lapping in the mid 32s. He's fallen off 6-7 tenths of a second from his fastest laps post pit stop, where he was running 31.7, 31.8. So, and once that 23 comes back down on pit road, it's not going to completely offset itself, but he's going to recoup a lot of that time that he's losing now. He just needs to make that fuel number, almost like in IndyCar races. Oh, the 54! I tell you what, he's not shy about racing people hard here tonight. Gets all the way on the door, that number 99, and I thought both of those trucks were going to go around right there, Peter.
Yeah, that was definitely tight between those two. Now we're looking a little bit further back. This is Zach Howell, Monty Glover battling for the 19th position. Seems like every time we check in on Zach Howell, he's battling with one of these drivers for position. We also saw Stan Hausman racing Dalton Hayes just a little while ago, but this side-by-side battle will continue on. Just waiting to see when will Travis White, your current race leader, elect to come down to his pit crew. Just now about 3.5 laps away from the cross flags here tonight at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Things definitely looking promising for the number 23 if he can hold on to the tires, Drew. I mean, one thing about the strategy that Travis White is doing is the fact that he's having to deal with these old tires on this race truck. I mean, We have seen how loose they are. One of our drivers on pit road here is the number 4 of Ben Mashburn. Got Chester's Chicken on the number 4. He's coming down to his pit crew here, Drew, and a great-looking truck. I got to say, that's a really cool scheme. But he's going to come to his pit box here, adjust a little bit before the cross flags. Meanwhile, Travis White continues to stay out here, make that 48 laps completed at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, just 2 laps away from the halfway mark. Here comes Mike Aiello, also coming down in the number 74 Toyota Tundra. So the big question is going to be, how far can Travis White push it here? We got a couple of drivers coming down pit road. Can Travis make it to the halfway mark before having to make his first pit stop here as he goes to the bottom side of the racetrack, maybe indicating here, Drew, that he's coming down pit road? No, he washes up the racetrack a little bit. Is he going to get on the brakes? Yes, indeed he does. So just a couple of laps short from the halfway mark, Drew. Does that indicate that he can't make it on fuel? Very, very hot getting down pit road.
Yeah, I think that he would be able to save enough in the last few laps, though, Peter. I mean, 1 lap shy of halfway, that would put him at lap 98. I think he can save quite a bit, especially once he comes out on new tires. He can afford to save a little bit on fuel on those fresh tires because he's going to be so much quicker than those guys around him. But the 13, Peter, he is going to be able to make it to halfway, and that is huge for that number 13 machine, who is still in the race lead. I mean, not by much, only just under 4 seconds is now that number 1 of Jason Gracias will retake that lead. But that number 13, that's critical because you're not just 1 lap short now of the end. Like that 23 was 1 lap short of halfway. That's going to double, right? Before we get to the end of this race, he's going to be 2 laps short if he makes the same fuel mileage in the second one, versus that number 13 was able to make it to halfway. That is absolutely crucial. He won't have to save any more than he did on that first run. So I think that 13's in really good shape. The 23 not in bad shape considering he was ahead of that number 13 machine. And here we go, Peter. This is what I'm talking about as far as difference in lap time is concerned. Look how much quicker that number 23 is than every other truck out there except the guys that pitted around that lap. And this is where he can kind of make up that time. And if he can unlap himself right here, even if there's a caution, that 23 won't be in bad shape.
Yeah, because currently Travis White is 1 lap down to the driver right in front of him, Jason Gracias. But Travis White says, you know what, I'm just going to get myself back on the lead lap. Back behind him, you do see Evan Bushbosher in the number 52 machine. He is now being scored 2 laps behind the race leader. But with the fresh tires on that number 23 machine and a possible strategy where he can make it to the end of the race, he's going to do all he can here to try and pick up as much ground here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Going to be interesting to see exactly how this all settles down at the drop of the checkered flag if we continue to go caution-free. And speaking of caution-free, if you didn't join us at the top of the show, tonight is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Awareness Event, and there is money on the line courtesy of MaxGrafix Racing Team. There it is, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. And, of course, suicidepreventionlifeline.org is also the website. If you know someone who is in need, or maybe even yourself, make sure to check them out. We'd really appreciate you checking them out if you are in need of talking. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us here on 3 Wide TV. And we hope it continues that way. And same thing goes for your family. We wish everyone well here on the channel. And we, of course, want to bring awareness to that. But with every green flag lap that we do run here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, $3 will be donated to them, courtesy of our friends over at MaxGrafix.co and MaxGrafix Racing. So right now, up at the front of the field, Jason Gracias is still your race leader, Drew, but he has been caught by Nick Kessler just a little bit. Remember, Kessler has 1 lap fresher tires on the number 88 machine. The gap between those two, just a couple of laps after the pit stops, was about 3 seconds. It's now down to just 0.6 of a second. They have cycled back through to first and second on the racetrack, but they're probably only about, 10 laps or so away from coming back down pit road and pitting here tonight in Atlanta.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how everyone else approaches this now that we know that these guys can go at least 40 laps. I would think that they would try to get closer to lap 60 and minimize the tire difference and the tire advantage that those guys who stretched it close to lap 50 have over them. That's certainly what I would be considering if I were the number 1, the number 88, the number 11. Basically, those guys right there in the near the race lead. If I were the 11, I don't think I have a ton to lose. I don't think I'm going to lose third if I do that. It would be interesting to see if one of those guys mixes up strategy-wise. The number 54 machine we were looking at right there now, the number 47 of Dalton Hayes running in 13th position. Didn't have a practice time, Peter. So pretty notable is, the 81 into the wall, Randy Bledsoe. And that's certainly not what that number 81 was looking for there on the backstretch. And we've seen a lot of pace early on from this 81 ever since that little incident with the number 54, though. 81 has been real loose. And unfortunately, Randy Bledsoe having a moment there out of turn 2, that's not going to make things any better for that machinist. That's a lot of damage for the amount of wall contact that number 81 had, Pete.
Yeah, and unfortunately, he's coming down pit road to get some of that damage repaired. We'll see if he gets 4 fresh Goodyear tires on it as well. Sure does look like it. So he will also be joined on pit road by Matt Cherry in the number 54 machine. So he knows that the pit window is open. Although, sorry about that. I saw that Adam Dama in the number 28 machine was also coming down pit road. There's Adam. In fact, he has jumped to pits, and there's a lot of damage on that car here, Drew. Let's see if we can see what happened to the Army Esports racing machine. Did something happen to that number 82 coming down pit lane here? A late entry, gets there on the flat, and kills the cone, hits the grass, and unfortunately gets into the inside wall.
Yeah, unfortunate for that number 82/28 untiming and scoring machine of Adam Dama. Luckily, though, for me, because I really want to see how this green flag strategy plays out, no caution. So we are still green here on lap 60 as Travis White has cut 10 seconds more than 10 seconds into that number 1's advantage over him. And that's just kind of what I'm monitoring right now. That 23 is in prime position. As what are we taking a look at now, Pete?
Number 77 of Doug Neal just had an excursion with the outside wall. Very similar to what we just saw with the number 81 machine. Just gets loose, goes up the racetrack right in front of your race leader as well. Jason Gracias scooting on by. And then look at how things have changed because, Doug Neal, the hometown hero, spinning it on entry to pit road. That's not good. Let's see if we can go around and see if we can get this replay. See if the same thing happened to him that happened to Adam Dama. No, he stays off the grass this time, but just locks up the rear brakes and makes some pretty hefty contact with the inside wall. Here comes Josh Sobel on the scene in the number 57. He does a good job of getting onto pit road, but I'm not sure if the racetrack is getting hotter or something here, Drew, but it's getting more treacherous. But some of our lead contenders have come down pit road. Jason Gracias just came down pit road on lap number 61. Nick Kessler, you see him going around the one on the outside. He did the undercut. Remember last time, Drew, we saw the undercut done by Gracias. Now Nick Kessler says, hey, you know what? I'm going to do that undercut. And he is going to be the first driver on fresh tires out there on the racetrack, at least as they run. So interesting things happening here. There's John Canizarro in the number 12, who is your race leader. He has yet to make his second pit stop here tonight. Where is Travis White, however? There's the number 23 machine. We think he's going to go all the way to the end of the race on this particular set of tires. We'll have to see whether or not that is true or not. But Drew, some of these drivers, it's looking pretty slick out there on the racetrack. They might be trying to cause a caution. I mean, they're probably not trying, but at least it seems like we're getting closer to a caution flag here at Atlanta, as we've been green flag here through the first 2/3 of the race almost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised that the 77 sitting there on pit road, just past pit road entry, didn't cause a caution. Typically when there's a truck stopped on pit road like that, kind of sideways, that'll throw out the yellow But again, I really want to see how this race plays out under full green conditions. We saw the Grand National Series race last week at Daytona go green the entire distance in spite of a wreck on pit road. So I guess it shouldn't surprise me that is the case when that 77 came on and off of pit road. But Peter, it's almost like the number one and the 88 were like listening to the broadcast when I said I would pit around lap 60, because they pitted on 60 and 61 respectively, trying to make sure that the 13 and that 23 machine don't have too much an advantage. But that 23 quad over 20 seconds away from Jason Gracias is the number 1 and 11 machines were right on basically those trucks' back bumper when they came down on lap 50. And ooh, that's a late commitment onto pit road from the number 14. I thought that he was going to get the grass and then looper there. That's Jeff Price getting onto pit road successfully, although not without drama right there, as he has maintained that kind of splitting the race into thirds strategy right here. Jeff Price coming onto pit road in 5th position. But Peter, now it's time to see how does this strategy work, as 3 wide right there with Monty Glover and Nathan Maurer, in my opinion. Almost said Steven Doziak. Those guys have had similar schemes in the past. Not tonight, though, as that 971 machine is having a decent run, obviously, in the race lead right now. It'll be interesting to see how long he stays out, as now Dalton Hayes comes onto pit road.
Yeah, and I really thought that the number 14 machine of Jeff Price was going to have a speeding penalty. He did not. He got onto pit road so hot. I really expected there to be some type of speeding penalty, but it definitely isn't a speeding penalty for him. As a 971, Nathan Maurer gets a little bit of wheel spin there in the quad oval, just showing you guys how loose it is back home. I mean, these trucks are not very stable here tonight. I mean, you're barely turning the wheel at that point of the racetrack there, Drew, but you can see that back end stick just jump out a little bit on that 971. So I'm sure Maurer here will be screaming for fresh tires here shortly. He was last on pit road on lap number 33, so now he's maybe trying a little bit different strategy to some of the other drivers out there. We know he can make it to about lap number 83 here tonight before he has to come down pit road. So still a good handful of laps in case a caution flag does come out. Maybe he's seeing what we've been seeing, where drivers are starting to hit the wall. Drivers are starting to make some mistakes. Maybe he's banking on there being a caution flag before he absolutely has to come onto pit road here tonight. Cody Brown in the number 8 machine is on pit road, as Drew, these 2 drivers right here on screen, however, we just kind of got a flash of them as they went by the camera. These 2 have been kind of glued together now for probably the last 20-25 laps or so, as Cherry and Philip Scott continue to do battle inside the top 10.
Yeah, it feels like since the last round of pit stops, we have not been able to separate this number 54 and number 99 of Matt Cherry into Philip Scott. They have been racing the heck out of each other. But Peter, again, I'm a paint scheme nerd. That number 47 of Dalton Hayes is awesome. The old Terry Labonte, 2002, 2003 scheme reminds me of my first real season watching NASCAR from the Daytona 500 to Homestead, when old Terry Labonte got his last victory in the 2003 Southern 500 at Darlington in this paint scheme. A really good job. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one Mr. MaxGrafix himself, Chris Darling, painted that. Just got to shout out that scheme. That is awesome to see. Reminds me of being a youngin' back in the day, back in peak NASCAR fandom for one Drew Eisman there. But Travis White in this 23 machine, he's the guy that we're focusing on now, because I think he is the furthest running truck that can really possibly make it, because Peter, that number 1 of Jason Gracias just passed Jordan Scheffler. So that number 13 machine is not going to win the race here, because that number 1 of Jason Gracias just passed him on track. So this 23 is our best bet for any of those guys that stayed out to possibly grab this victory here.
Yeah, I'm, looking at this, and that graphic down there in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is kind of telling right now. Not sure if maybe Travis White is trying to save fuel. He might be trying to do so here, Drew. But you can see that gap in the last 5 laps has gone from 8.2 seconds or so down to now just 3.6. So the 23 is losing ground to the number 1 of Gracias here very rapidly, as well as the number 88 of Nick Kessler, who is now finding himself in 3rd. Of course, a leapfrog, Jason Gracias, under that last pit stop sequence because of the undercut. But that's going to be an interesting battle if maybe Kessler can get to Travis White. Not sure if Travis White will just lay over, even though Kessler has been very, very quick here tonight in the number 88 Taz Racing Customs Chevrolet. But Travis White still at this point in the race holding on to 2nd. Nathan Maurer is still your race leader, but we know he can only go about another 8 or so laps before he absolutely has to come down pit road and take on fuel here tonight, as we're looking at potentially a caution-free race. And dare I jinx it, Drew, $430 would be donated to the cause for suicide awareness. I mean, my oh my, that would be just insurmountable, and it's so generous out of our friends over at MaxGrafix Racing and MaxGrafix.co. But we still have 25 laps, still a quarter of the race here to go, so plenty of time for something to happen. Just checking out the chat. Of course, we had Rich Sobel in the chat here tonight. Rich, great to have you back here on 3 Wide TV. I know Rich is always rooting on that driver right there. Joshua Sobel running in the 9th position on the racetrack, pitted on lap number 61. And he's actually closing in on a couple of these drivers in front of him. Got some slightly fresher tires than Philip Scott and Matt Cherry, so that is allowing Sobel to make some strides here late in the race. So possibly a top 5 could be on the cards for the number 57. We'll have to wait and see. Evan Bushbosher and Ben Mashburn are duking it out on the racetrack. This is a battle for 24th position between these two. Joshua Corner also in this battle. The number 9 has had a fairly quiet race, but a quiet race is sometimes a good race here, Drew, especially if you're kind of new to the league. You kind of get in, feel out the competition, and the last thing you want to have is come to a league and make a bad name for yourself. And Joshua Corner here doing a good job in the Team Realtree Chevrolet.
Yeah, a fantastic job by that driver. It's always hard when you're starting off in a new league and you're trying to figure out exactly where you're gonna not necessarily fit in, but where you're gonna run, how these drivers race each other. That number 9 of Joshua Corner doing a solid job in that Realtree Chevy Silverado, running in 26th, a couple laps down, but not a bad way to introduce yourself to the league. Is once again, Peter, that blue and green trucks, those blue and green trucks, I guess, just can't separate themselves. But we got a couple new contenders involved in this battle, as well as that number 57 machine. That is a battle for position. That number 2, though, is not on the same lap as these guys, as Justin White is 31 laps down, quite a bit of right front damage on that 2 as well. But Josh Sobel having a solid run here. Mr. Sobel is the 54. Man, whew, that was a moment. It's not a moment that has not happened necessarily in this race for Mr. Cherry before, but that was as dramatic as we've seen here, Peter. And just kind of walk us through what you're seeing right here.
Yeah, just might have got on the throttle a little bit too much there through the center of turn number 1 and 2, and then just sawed on the wheel to keep it going straight. Had to pedal it a little bit. You could hear that, but a great job there by that number 54 driver to keep it going straight. I mean, this is back live, and he's still struggling with that one. Let's go back and get this one, because this is just about a lap later. And same deal, going through turn number 1 and 2. In fact, I think he had that thing yawed out even more that time than the previous time. So Matt Cherry, we've mentioned this before, Drew. Not the first time here tonight. We've talked about this, but that number 54 machine, look at how sideways he is dirt tracking it through turn number 2, looking like Eldora, not Atlanta Motor Speedway. And meanwhile, up at the front of the field, look at this, Drew. Nick Kessler has gotten around Travis White, but look who is caught up to Nick Kessler. They're side by side for the race lead. 18 laps to go. We know Gracias and Kessler can make it to the checkered flag in both of these trucks. So the race is on. Gracias clears Kessler. Kessler coming back here down the backstretch.
Oh, I don't think the 88's going to let him have that position, but now we have some faster trucks not on the lead lap racing them. Is the 88 going to get to the rear bumper of the 1? He cuts that thing low on corner exit and is going to try to take the lead from the inside lane here. I think this is going to be a big ask for that number 88 machine, especially given the 1 just has 1 lap advantage as far as tires are concerned, but it seemed like that 1 lap has made a huge difference. I just cut away from the 54 when he had a big wiggle. My apologies there. He is going the right direction. Though Peter, as now that this 1 has established his track position over Nick Kessler, it's going to take a lot of driving for that 88 to get back by us. Oh, we have a little bit of drama on the front stretch. I can't tell. I think that's the Monty Glover in the 10 machine. There we go, Peter. What happened here? Oh, a big old loop for that number 10. No contact, though. Spins it to the inside of the track and no caution, as thankfully that number 10 kind of kept it low instead of trying to immediately get back on track, which would have probably caused a caution. But Peter, the track temp hasn't increased but 1 degree since the race start. I'm just wondering, how are these guys suddenly, it seems like everybody is getting really loose off of turn 4. Do you think maybe the track's rubbering in more and that's making the exit of 4 slippery? What do you think's going on here?
You know, the track temperature can be kind of a deceiving thing, as now Gracias gets loose in the number 1 MaxGrafix Chevy Silverado up at the front. The lap count's winding down. I think that's a key factor. I think the track temperature, it might not have changed, but sometimes you actually get a little bit hotter lanes than one another. So even though the average of the racetrack might only be 1 degree hotter from the drop of the green flag, certain lanes might be a little bit hotter. And now caution flag is out. And I think the somewhat inevitable has happened. Driver of the number 54 machine will go on board with him right here, Drew. Keep your eyes on the wheel. Just snaps out from underneath them. That time just too much and gets into William Kerwin in the 07 machine. We'll see if we can get another look, make sure there wasn't any contact, but the 54 has gone around and caution flag waves for the first time here tonight. And we've been highlighting Matt Cherry and the trouble that he's been having with the rear tires, and all by his lonesome, it just steps out on him. Just unbelievably steps out on him. Almost looks like he blew a tire or something there, Drew, because it just went around on him.
Yeah, and the iRacing tire failure it needs work, to put it kindly, because you don't know that it happened. You know, I don't know how. I mean, I've had a flat tire in real life, and it's immediately noticeable. You hear it, you feel it, you know what's happening. I mean, the way that comes around on him, I mean, I would agree. I don't know. We'd have to ask Mr. Cherry himself after this race, but I wish that there was more of a notice that your tire's actually down. I know when the 1987 cars is now a bunch of guys coming off pit road, including our leaders. Actually, this worked out really well for Justin White in that number. Sorry, Travis White. My apologies. Travis White in the number 23 machine, as now he's going to be on even tires with these guys and is going to be in 3rd position. But one thing I noticed when the 1987 cars came out, Peter, I think that's when the first time I had experienced just a tire wear failure, and there's no sound, there's no sensation. All of a sudden, if you lose the right front, the car just doesn't turn. And then if you lose the rear, it just over-rotates like that on you. I would hope iRacing gives a little more sound and feedback to that than just, I'm not turning all of a sudden, and I don't know why. But it wouldn't surprise me if that was a tire failure on that 54 every single time through 3 and 4, or through 1 and 2, and off of 4, that 54 was wheeling that machine. And then what are we taking a look at now?
We're just trying to figure out to our first Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award winner of the race was here tonight. Just trying to kind of fiddle through and see if we can get our eyes on who that might have been, because, of course, Brookstone Animal Hospital being from the Atlanta, Georgia area, we want to give them a shout-out when we can here on the channel, and I believe we have actually figured out who it was. Sorry about that, folks. It's the number 13 right there of Jordan Shepler, who is our Brookstone Animal Hospital Lucky Dog Award winner, the first one of the night, and we handed out a couple last week at Daytona International Speedway, but of course, Brookstone Animal Hospital being in the greater Atlanta, Georgia area, we want to give them a shout out. BrookstoneVet.com. They can take care of your pets. And if you're in that neck of the woods, or this neck of the woods, Atlanta Motor Speedway, you will be able to go check them out. And we definitely appreciate their support here in the National Sim Racing Association. Let's go back live up to the front of the field. There is the number 88 machine of Nick Kessler, who won the race off pit road. Very importantly, won the race off pit road because he will have the race lead. Started this race on pole. In fact, the number 1 of Jason Gracias started to his outside. And we saw very early in the race that the 88, Drew, didn't have a lot of short run pace. We saw John Canizarro actually pass the number 88 early in the run. Will we see something similar again here? It's going to be a 10-lap shootout, just 15 miles here at Atlanta.
Yeah, Peter, just, it's going to be fascinating to see 10, or I guess, yeah, it'll be 10 to go. Am I off? Oh, Matt Cherry's. I'm sorry. I was still watching the 54. He's a lap down. So yeah, green flag with 10 to go. We've had a heck of a battle under green conditions. I got to say, I don't have a lot of faith that we're going to kind of maintain the green flag feel that this race had through the first literally 9/10 of its unfolding. But we'll see. We'll see. Typically, when guys haven't been around each other very much, basically the whole race, and all of a sudden you kind of throw them all together, a bunch of chaos tends to unfold. But we shall see as that number 88 machine leads them to the green flag here, coming to lap 91. A great restart by that number 88 machine, the one with a decent restart as well. A little posturing prior to the start-finish line, nothing egregious, but there are some new interpretations of the lane change rule. We'll have to see if that comes into effect, as it very much did last night and drastically changed the results of last night's races. And the number 1 machine, though, is certainly going to be trying to get by the number 88 as the field is well and truly grouped up now, and we have a ton of racing going on here, Pete.
Yeah, and Justin White is still out there on the racetrack. I don't think he can pick up any more spots. Kind of surprised. He is an administrator here in the 3YTV, not 3YTV, but the National Sim Racing Association. Man, I get my nouns mixed up here. But here comes Jason Gracias, Drew. We talked about the fact that number 1 was fast on the short run in the 88, and Nick Kessler wasn't exactly fast on the short run. They're side by side, coming to just 8 laps to go, 12 miles here. And chat, it is going to be one heck of a finish right here on the channel. We appreciate each and every one of you being here alongside us for every lap this season on 3YTV, as Gracias just able to clear. Kessler throws a little bit of a block on the 88 going down the backstretch, Drew.
Yeah, the 88's coming back on the inside, though, and early on, Peter, this inside can work. The 88, though, washes up a little bit. Is he going to be able to keep it out of the outside wall? Out of turn 4, he does, but I don't think this number 88 is going to be satisfied. I think he's going to make another charge at this number 1 machine, as the rest of the field, though, is kind of settled out. But that number 23 has, what a strategy call that was. He was nowhere near those guys. Qualified in 20th position, Peter, was that number 23 machine, running now in 3rd position with just a few laps to go here. Now just 7 to go, as some crazy racing going on between Philip Scott and Stan Hausman right there, right around the just outside of that top 10. But the number 88 machine's got some work to do if he's going to get back up and challenge Jason Gracias for this win.
Yeah, Gracias has about a truck length as they go through turn number 1 and 2 between those 2 trucks up at the front. Travis White, what a great night it has been. A great strategy call on the number 23 machine with that caution flag flying. That, of course, erased all possibility of him having to come down pit road to make that final spot. final stop and also put him on equal tires with everyone else around him. Here comes Jeff Price. Kind of a quiet night for the number 14 Back Channel Productions Chevrolet, but he's racing hard with John Canizarro. Gets around the number 12, moved him up to 4th. And remember, Canizarro had all that short run pace earlier at the top of the show, but he's now sliding back as we are coming to just 4 more laps to go here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Canizarro having another dive underneath the number 14 of Jeff Price. Josh Sobel, he qualified 6th. He's running in 6th. He's hoping these two get a little bit racy with one another so he can catch back up to these two. But as you can see, a gap has definitely formed back behind them. But we have to keep our eyes on this battle for the race lead, coming to just 3 more laps to go here, Drew. And of course, here tonight on the channel, we're going to have to go back and take a look at that replay of the restart. We will cue that up at the end of the race just to make sure there are no post-race dramas, because one of the new rules this week that just was announced today is that the finishing order is unofficial until the race has been reviewed, and I'm sure the administrators will review that final restart, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's a little different interpretation. It's essentially that you have the intention to change lanes, and that 88, I tell you what, it's real close. Just kind of going back and looking at it now, it's going. I know fans are always so critical of rules being gray and shades of gray and not black and white. But I got to tell you, folks, as somebody who has tried to really think about how rules are created and have to be created, there's no way to make something that is open to interpretation like a restart. And whether you change lanes or not, you can't really draw a threshold between this is changing lanes and this isn't. Sometimes they're kind of close and you have to decide, no, that's okay and that's not okay, even if it kind of falls within the minutia of the rules. And that's going to be up to a race decision, but that's then going to set precedence to what is and is not a lane change. So it'll be really interesting to see if that's the thing, because I do think that is something that's really important, because something like lane changes can influence the ability of the driver in second position to even compete for that race race lead. Is now Peter coming out of turn 4. Jason Gracias holds off Nick Kessler for the race win tentatively at Atlanta. What a job did that number 1 machine do it super fast all night, and he holds off the number 88 who charged hard on that last lap.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, assuming this all holds up, it is going to be a little bit of retribution, I think, for Jason Gracias. We'll keep our eyes on the number 1 machine here, let him do his burnouts, and then we'll get a look back at the one and only restart, just in case, just because it's kind of the hot ticket item here on 3Wide TV. The National Sim Racing Association is these restarts, and of course, with a MaxGrafix.co truck taking home the checkered flag, even more money will be going to the suicide prevention hotline pool here tonight, put together by our friends over at MaxGrafix. And looks like the number 1 of Jason Gracias will be burning it down here on the front stretch. But I want to say here tonight, Drew, close to $400 raised for the suicide prevention hotline, and there is Jason Gracias burning it down here on the front stretch. And I think we, in celebratory fashion and kind of in line with what we have today, we're going to bring up the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number right there at the bottom of the screen, 1-800-273-TALK, and the suicidepreventionlifeline.org website. And I'm sure Jason Gracias will be talking about that in his post-race interview, but he'll be one happy camper after this, assuming that nothing crazy happened on that final restart. Let's see if we can get that final restart queued up for everyone here on the channel. Let's see, is that going to be queued up? Here we go. This will give us a look here, Drew. Kind of talk us through this restart here, because the pace truck's just headed off right there. We'll kind of let it roll a little bit more, but this is going to be kind of that gray area. You see Gracias, he's A-okay, but what about that number 88 machine?
But see, look, the one's starting to come down a little bit now. Look at the 88 fading high. He's right. Look at he's right there. Look at everybody else in line on that inside lane. The 88's about a half groove up. Does that constitute a lane change? That's what I'm talking about, folks, is as to whether that is a lane change or not. There's no way to make that yes or no. This threshold is a lane change. If you ride it that way, then sometimes what isn't considered a lane change in reality was a lane change. You have to leave that to human judgment and just hope that that judgment is based on sound logic and is consistent. And if that's the case, then I'm totally okay with rules being open to interpretation. It's when those rules that are kind of open to interpretation are enforced in a way that is not consistent across the board and from driver to driver. I think of, I don't know, maybe the FIA when I think of stuff like that and how they've, I don't know, recently ruled a particular incident at Monza. I think a little bit of inconsistency there. But I think as long as in what the guys at NSRA, the admins, do very well is consistency, I'm totally okay with that being a thing. It'll just be interesting to see, is that a lane change or is it not? Because quite frankly, Peter, I could see both sides to that argument based on what we just looked at.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll have to let the race officials sort that one out. But hey, we do have a special request this week, and that is Jason Gracias has messaged me, let me know he needs to be interviewed first. Of course, he is the race winner, so we do want to hear from him. Jason, congratulations on getting the win here tonight. A lot of green flag racing, some amazing racing with you and Nick Kessler here tonight. Talk us through your race.
Yeah, I apologize for wanting to get interviewed first. I got to pick up some friends from the bar that had too much to drink, so I don't want them to get in trouble. You know, always drive responsibly. But overall, I mean, this was a great race. There was a deep cause behind this race for suicide awareness. So I applaud everybody in this league for keeping a green flag and keeping it clean. I applaud the MaxGrafix trucks. They really came out to show today. It was a great track. You know, it was a lot of racing, a lot of comers and goers, a lot of clean racing, a lot of good saves. Overall, it's just a great race for a great league.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was hot. It was slick. Tell us how the race trucks were driving here tonight, because it didn't look easy from up here in the booth.
No, I mean, this is Atlanta. It's a shame that they want to tear it up to make it a super speedway, but I guess that's what the fans want. I'm a purist, so I guess I'm not a fan. So I guess I don't fall in that category. But it was hot and slick. From practice, you could do 15 laps and kind of push the truck. But after those 15 laps of pushing the truck, you were paying for it. That right rear and the left rear were just burning up. Coming off the corners, you had to drive like there was a egg under the pedal, like Freeman would say. So if you manage the throttle, you could have a good long run speed. One thing I didn't do in that first run, I tried to gap and take the lead, and I made a mistake. So I was slipping and sliding the first run, but the second and third, I really made up for it.
Yeah, you surely did make up for it here tonight at Atlanta, and a really strong showing for you. But hey, next week we go to the short track, Iowa Speedway, for 200 laps at Iowa. What are your thoughts about going to that little short track?
I don't think Iowa's a short track, but it's a good track. I mean, hopefully we'll get a good set brought in. I know Iowa can get boring. It's a lot of single file, one group racing. So if Justin can build a good set for next week, I'm sure we'll have great racing just like Atlanta.
Man, in my books, anything less than a mile is a short track. So it comes in at 7/8 of a mile. So in my book, short track. But hey, it definitely doesn't always race like a short track. Going to be a lot of fun next week. But before we let you go, any shout outs you'd like to give out there, Jason?
Yeah, shout out to the league. It's really well run. Shout out to Ben and Chris and Justin. Again, I've always said this, firm but fair. Good, very consistent with the calls, so I applaud them all around. Thanks to Stay Tuned Sports Podcast for being title sponsor once again. Thanks to all the associate sponsors that stepped up. Shout out to my TNR teammates, Garrett, Doze, Vinny, and Philip. I know Philip and Doze have come a really long way. They showed a lot of speed today, so hopefully one of them can get into victory lane later this year. Thanks to my sponsor, MaxGrafix, for throwing up a donation challenge, and hopefully we met the max donation or close to it. And shout out to Chris at MaxGrafix for the sick truck. So if you need any iRacing paints, check him out on Facebook. It's MaxGrafix on Facebook. And thanks to 3YTV, Peter, you and Drew. Excellent broadcast. Probably my favorite broadcast of the week. I might be biased, but it's a good broadcast.
Well, Jason, it always feels good also when you get to go to victory lane at the end of the night. But congratulations on taking home the win. And we'll see you next week at the Iowa Speedway.
Thanks, guys. Everyone be safe and have a good weekend.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's race winner, the number 1 of Jason Gracias. And now we'll kind of bring in tonight's third place finisher, Travis White here, Drew.
Well, Travis White, certainly a heck of a strategy call that allowed you to get up there, compete for that podium. You came so close to lap 50. Were you just a little short when you came in, coming to lap 51, coming to halfway? And then what was your thought process going towards that strategy call?
Well, I had a flashback to Daytona about running out of gas. And, I know MaxGrafix was going to put up the some extra money if the race went caution-free, so I didn't want to be the guy that brought out the caution, running out of gas. And I definitely didn't want to run out of gas again, especially halfway through the race instead of on the last lap. So I decided to bring her on in a lap early and try to save a little bit more gas. I think I was going to be a little short. I don't think I could make it. But it kind of paid off. At first, I wasn't even going for the halfway strategy. I was just going to try to gamble and stay out and see if I could catch a break, catch a caution. And then next thing you know, I'm looking at how many laps are left and, just splitting it down the middle. And I'm like, well, I might as well just go ahead and try to run it out. And it worked out pretty good. I'm glad to get a podium. And it was a great cause we're racing for tonight.
Yeah, certainly agree. And you mentioned not wanting to be the one that caused the caution. Well, you weren't, but with just about 10 to go, we saw that caution, and your pit strategy brought you up from that 20th starting position to 3rd. What was going through your mind on that last restart? Were you trying to get up there and mix it up with that number 1 in the 88? Were you just content with 3rd? What was your thought process at that point?
Well, I was going to see what was going to happen. I mean, honestly, in practice, I was like, all right, I don't know what everybody's going to do after lap 13, because at lap 13 and beyond, it just got wrecking loose, start just turning left off the side of the corner, and it's like, well, I'm just going to have to baby it and, really work throttle control. Yeah, but running 50 laps, though, it kind of, broke me in pretty good as far as being able to manage and deal with how the track was, how the race was going to set up. And they probably ran a little harder than I did throughout the race, just for the fact of they pitted 3 times and then I was kind of trying to save. But at the same time, that long run really got me into a rhythm to where I could, I felt pretty good, but I don't think I quite had the pace. But I was going to give it a try. I mean, I was starting out the restart, the catbird seat, so, I mean, I can't say that, I wasn't hoping that, hey, I was rolling the dice earlier, and I certainly, was still kind of seeing how the dice were going to fall. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Hello.
Not sure what's happened to Drew. Maybe some connection issues there. But Travis, definitely a great race for you here tonight. And next week we got Iowa Speedway. What are your thoughts about going to Iowa?
Iowa. Yeah, that should be pretty fun. I ran there last week in a different league and ran pretty good there. It's a pretty tough track. It's got some bumps going down into 1. You kind of got to watch out for, and you got to watch running up high too, because it's got a bump in turn 1 there too. And pit road is definitely tricky getting on. I think I'll do pretty well. We'll just have to see how the track is, and if the truck, it was a different. It was running cars last time I ran there, so we'll see how the trucks do.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting. Pretty bumpy racetrack, and it can race like a short track. Sometimes races like Speedway. We'll just have to wait and find out next week. But Travis, anyone you want to give a shout out to here tonight?
Yeah, give a shout out to my family and Simbox Racing Team and Chris and MaxGrafix for the donation that they putting on tonight for Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's a great cause, and I'm not sure exactly what the total is. I think my truck would be considered one of the MaxGrafix cars too, because he painted it, and I think I might have to throw a little money in on that as well. I have to get with him.
All right, we've already seen a couple of drivers do the same. Joshua Sobel has been on the Discord here saying he's going to throw in some money for that. So always throwing some money towards a good cause here in the National Sim Racing Association. I got to say, I don't think there's another league out there that does so much for charity. But Travis, thanks for stopping by, and congratulations on your third place finish here tonight.
Thank you. Good points tonight.
That it is. Well, folks, unfortunately, Drew Eisenman has informed me that he has had some issues with his power. His power has gone out, so we'll just kind of have to bring up Nick Kessler here, tonight's second place finisher, and Nick started on the pole. Strong night for the number 88. It didn't look like you had the short run pace early in the race. At the drop of the green flag, of course, definitely showing a lot of long run pace, and there again, I was a little bit concerned with a 10-lap shootout that the same thing was going to happen, and Gracias got around you, but great night. Points-wise, great finish in second. You might be a little bit upset not getting the checkered flag, but you, of course, did pick up that craigsetupshop.co.uk pole award at the top of the show. So all things considered, a pretty good night for you. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Overall, it's a pretty good night. Just a little bit emotional not getting that win. Like you said, I had long run pace. After 20 laps, the tires kick in to where I can run any line and be good. But that late race caution came out. I took tires only. But in dirty air, having no fuel to loosen the car up some, I could do nothing. I tried using the wall to turn the car into the corner, but even waiting till the last lap, that wasn't enough time.
Well, definitely a great run. You showed a lot of pace here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. There are other 1.5 miles on the schedule. Looking at the schedule, do you have any races that you think are races that you kind of have circled, or was tonight one of those races?
Tonight was definitely one of those races. I don't really know what's ahead, but really anything that deals with tire conserving, I really circle because I feel like I'm the best at doing that, as I proved tonight. But other than that, maybe short tracks, but definitely 1.5 miles.
Well, we'll be definitely keeping an eye on you and that number 88 all season long. Of course, Taz Racing Customs Chevrolet, another one of the sponsors here in the National Sim Racing Association. Speaking of short tracks, I think it's a short track. Jason Gracias doesn't think it's a short track. We'll beg to differ on that. But next week is Iowa Speedway. What are your thoughts of Iowa?
A really bumpy racetrack. I feel like I'll need a lot of practice for that race. Usually I don't practice for these races, but Iowa is like when you enter a corner and the bumps hit you, you slide up the track and then just costs the whole straightaway speed. But definitely going to be an interesting week next week.
That is for sure. A hard race here tonight with the slick racetrack. Will be a hard one next week with all of the bumps. Before I let you go, Nick, anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Stay Tuned Sports Brookstone Animal Hospital, Beer Street Journal, Craig Setup Shop, Taz Racing Customs for your custom diecast needs, MaxGrafix, Sim Shops, 3-Wide TV for broadcasting, Jason for racing me clean the last 10 laps, and everyone in the field for keeping it green all night.
Yeah, definitely a great race here tonight and a great runner-up for you here, Nick. I'm sure a lot of people will have their eyes on you going forward here this season. We'll talk to you later, bud.
Later.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our post-race interviews. Let's see if we can bring up tonight's final race results here on the channel. It is, of course, going to be Jason Gracias taking home the win, if we can ever get those up. There we go. There we go. Jason Gracias with that win. Nick Kessler just over a tenth behind him. It was a close finish there right at the end. Maybe Nick was starting to find a little bit of something with that higher groove that he was talking about on entry to the corner, just coming up a little bit short. Travis White coming home in third. What a great run it was for him with his very different pit strategy. Definitely working out for him in the long run with that late race caution. We heard he might have been a little bit short on fuel. John Canizarro going to come home in fourth, right in front of Jeff Price. Chris Darling, Joshua Sobel finishing 6th and 7th. Randy Perdue, good run for him and the number 25 machine there in 8th. Dalton Hayes in the number 47, the Terry Labonte inspired scheme, picks up tonight's Taz Racing Customs Biggest Mover of the Race award, gaining 19 spots from the drop of the green flag. So congratulations, Dalton, on route to a top 10. TJ Buck rounding out your top 10 in the 10th position. Mike Aiello in 11th. The Stan Houseman, the hometown hero, in 12th. Zach Howell, 13th. Nathan Maurer in 14th. Philip Scott, 15th. I know Philip was mentioning that he had some damage on his truck, and unfortunately it just wouldn't go there at the end under that short sprint to the finish. So he relegated himself down to 15th there at the end. Jordan Scheffler, Stephen Dozier, the last two trucks on the lead lap, with Barry Knapp, the first truck, 1 lap down. Looking a little bit further back in the pack, Matt Cherry, Cody Brown, 19th and 20th. Ben Mashburn, 21st. William Kerwin, 1 lap down in 22nd. Evan Bushbosher, 23rd. Joshua Corner in 24th. Monty Glover, Garrett Gleason, 25th and 26th. Then you have Doug Neal, another one of the hometown heroes. It wasn't his night after having contact with the wall. He finishes 27th, 4 laps down. Randy Bledsoe rounds out your top 28. Justin White, Adam Dama, 29th and 30th. Vincent Valvano, Jason Shue, Johnny Williams, 31st through 33rd. Then you have Kyle Lewis, who was the first retiree here tonight. Scott Tompkins and Chad Waller did not start here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. So 34 trucks started the race, and I believe 28 or so finally made it to the start-finish line. So all things considered, with how treacherous this racetrack was, it was a good night. Of course, we do want to mention one final time here tonight on 3-Wide TV, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Tonight, of course, raising some money for them, a great cause, as well as bringing awareness to them. There's the phone number, 1-800-273-TALK. It is never too late to reach out to them. So make sure, if you need it, they are there. If you know someone who might need it, let them know about it. That number right there, write it down on something, write it down on a card, pause the YouTube video if you need it. Website is suicidepreventionlifeline.org. There's also a link in the description of tonight's video, as well as that phone number right there. So if you ever need it, just remember race number 2 at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the National Sim Racing Association on YouTube. You can go find it. A big shout out to them, and big shout out to MaxGrafix Racing, MaxGrafix.co, one of the series sponsors here, for donating a big chunk of cash. I know Travis White said he's going to help out in that fund. We've also heard Joshua Sobel saying he's going to put $20 towards the cause as well. Christopher Darling, who runs MaxGrafix Racing, said this was really close to his heart here tonight. And so it's important here, folks, and we really appreciate all that we do here in the National Sim Racing Association, and all that we can give back to the sponsors and people who need it. The promotion out there of all the causes. But, folks, that's just about going to do it here on the channel. We did highlight, of course, the Taz Racing Customs Biggest Mover of the Race Award. We said that goes to the driver of the number 47, Dalton Hayes, plus 19 positions. So I want to give them a shout out for all of their custom diecasts that they do. Get your name on one of those. Go out, pick one up. They're really, really cool. You can check them out on Facebook. There's a link in the description, facebook.com/Taz Racing Customs, as well as the other series sponsors here that makes racing possible on 3 Wide TV, the National Sim Racing Association. Of course, Stay Tuned Sports. There's a link to their Podbean, so you can go listen to the Stay Tuned Sports podcast with Jimbo. Craig's Setup Shop, craigsetupshop.co.uk, MaxGrafix, maxgrafix.co, Brookstone Animal Hospital, home is, as my dog got all excited about the Brookstone Animal Hospital. Maybe he's upset. Maybe he doesn't want to go to the vet. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know. But perfect timing, almost on cue there. BrookstoneVet.com in the greater Atlanta, Georgia area. Sim Shots as well. They take pictures of all these races. And Beer Street Journal, who we did not have a Beer Street Journal last call here tonight at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Who knows when that might be, when we'll see the next Beer Street Journal last call. But big shout out to them, BeerStreetJournal.com. You can check them out for all of your craft beer news. And I think that's going to do it here on 3 Wide TV for the Stay Tuned Sports Podcast Truck Series, race number 2 this season. Folks, thanks for sticking with us here tonight, and appreciate everyone in the chat. Daniel Noble jumping in there late. Joshua Sobel. Daniel, all is well here tonight. I'm sure you heard Oliver in the background. John Canizarro saying the Woody Wagon came home in one piece. Brantley Roden saying love that. I know Joshua Sobel was saying he absolutely had a blast here tonight. Rich Sobel saying good night, Peter, Drew, and 3 Wide TV. See you guys next race. Good night, Jimbo and Brantley. It's just a great family here in the National Sim Racing Association. Really cool that we have the people who can give that money out to the suicide prevention group, and we really do appreciate it. But until then, folks, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. See ya.